So I know for most people that studying for exams and tests is really annoying and not fun, but if you're one of the weirdos like me, actually studying is one of the best parts about flight school. And also studying is just important because there's a ton of concepts that you have to know, like emergency procedures and radio frequencies and airport operation procedures. So sitting down and learning is part of your job. So without wasting your time, let's get into it. Let's talk about how to study in flight school. Before I went to flight school, I would spend time on YouTube watching my favorite YouTubers, and some of the ones I really liked were all the medical channels. So the people that were going to medical school or they were in their residency, they would always film how they would study, like how they studied for exams. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind. Once I got into flight school, I was overwhelmed with so much information, like I don't know where to study. And I remembered I had watched those videos on how to study in medical school. Search that up on YouTube, how to study in medical school, and I used that information from those videos to formulate my own study plan. And this is what works for me, and it's formulated for pilots, and this is how I got myself through private, commercial, CFI. I didn't really know what I was doing in my private. By the end of it, I kind of got it down during my commercial. I really learned how to work it, and then it worked great for CFI, IFR, and II. But let's talk about how to do it. And the most important point that I want you to take away from this video, if there's one thing you listen to, it's this. When you are studying for any of your pilot's license, whether it be your private, your commercial, your CFI, so on and so forth, when you are studying for the FAA written test, the knowledge test that you go to the center and you get on the computer and take that test, when you are studying for that, that information has little to no relevancy to actually being a pilot and the knowledge you need to pass your check ride. So when I was studying for my private, I used this app called Prepware on my iPad and on my phone, and it's the multiple choice questions. It's exactly like what's on the FAA written test, and I would go through and study on that. And I was trying to learn the information from this Prepware app that was on the written test, and I was like, okay, well, this is what's on the written test, this is what I need to know. No, that information, like I said, has little to no relevancy. Memorize those answers, honestly. Like if you learn something from it, that's good, but memorize those answers and then take the test, and then you kind of don't need that information. What you actually need to be a pilot is like a different set of information. Don't get me wrong, there's a couple things on those written tests that are important that you need to know, but in my opinion, it's just like a check that the FAA needs, that you technically do have the knowledge and you know all that stuff, but it doesn't really mean you're a good pilot and you know the right stuff. So with that out of the way, here's what you need to know. Your FAA check ride is written out on paper before you go to your check ride. Every little piece of knowledge that you can and will be asked on your check ride is available prior to you taking it. And it blows my mind how many people don't know this exists, but your check ride is written out in two places. If you're flying helicopters, it is the Practical Test Standards, PTS, and if you're flying airplanes, I think it's called the ACS, Airman Certification Standards. And this is a PDF document that you can download online for free, and it says, to determine that an applicant is well prepared and knowledgeable in the right areas, the DPE, or the Designated Pilot Examiner, the person who's going to make you a pilot or make you not a pilot, is going to ask you questions from the PTS or the ACS on certain different areas. And if you know those areas beforehand and you study those areas, at least on the oral portion, you're well prepared. PTS and the ACS as well, they walk you through what the flight is going to be. So what's going to be asked on the flight, the maneuvers, the parameters. So we're going to jump onto my computer real quick, and then we're going to quickly go through the PTS just so you know what to look for. All right, so here we are on my computer, and if you just go into Google and you look up FAA private pilot, helicopter, practical test standards. All right, so it's the first one, FAA private practical test standards. All right, so here it is. Rotorcraft, helicopter, and gyroplane. It gives you the table of contents, section 1, and then the areas of operation, and that's what we really care about. Pre-flight preparation, pre-flight procedures, so on and so forth, and then they get into maneuvers, so takeoffs, landings, and go-arounds. And then if we look at number 1, or I, area of operation pre-flight preparation, note, the examiner shall develop a scenario based on real-time weather to evaluate tasks C, D, E, and F. A, certificates and documents, to determine that the applicant exhibits knowledge of the elements related to certificates and documents by explaining private pilot certificates and privileges and limitations, blah, 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 pilot logbooks and flight records. locating and explaining operating limitations, placards, instrument markings, and POH or rotorcraft flying manual. And then it says reference 14 CFR part 43, 61, 67, 91. This is just the Federal Aviation Regulation, the FAR, and these parts, those are relevant. Now if you look at these are advisory circulars, so you can just copy that, command copy, command paste, and so the helicopter flying handbook and all of the chapters of it. Or if we go to another one, FAA H3 whatever blah blah blah, punch that into a new tab, command copy, enter, Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. This is where they're pulling their information from. If you remember that it says the examiner shall develop a scenario for task C, D, E, and F. Let's look at task C, weather information. So where can you get this in? Where can you get references for this? Advisory Circular 006. What is that one? We punch that in. Aviation weather. Well, that's relevant, right? AC 0045. Punch that in. What's that one? Aviation weather services. So you can see that this is where they're asking METAR, meteorological aerodrome report, TAF, area forecast, so on and so forth. So this is, they're gonna ask a scenario relating to this information and this information and this information. It's the same thing for fixed wing. So if I pull up the Airman Certification Standards, the ACS, it's basically the same document. I or number 1 for the ACS, task A, pilot qualifications. References, FARs, part 61, 68, 91. These documents that you can just punch into Google. And then the objective, it's the same thing. B, airworthiness certificate, airworthiness requirements, references, objective. This is your check ride. So now you know what information that you're going to be asked about and what you need to study. And it's not like you're going to know the exact questions or the way they're going to phrase it, but if you have the general knowledge of those subject areas, you're going to be good. So how do you actually study for that? Well, from those YouTube videos that I had watched about people in medical school, there was this idea called a pass tracker. It tracks the number of times you have studied a certain amount of material. So I took all the information from the practical test standards as well as a couple other resources like the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, some more stuff from the FAR-AIM, and I put it into a spreadsheet, a Google Sheets spreadsheet, and I built a pass tracker. So we're gonna talk about that real quick. Here is the Google Sheet I put together. What I did is I copied over all the technical subjects like Task A, aeromedical stuff, and then I added my own stuff. So I think this one was for my CFI check ride. So I added additional stuff. So I copied over the practical test standards, but then I said, okay, my maneuver lessons, SFAR 73 and special emphasis areas. So I just copied that all over there, and then across the top we have the first time I went over it, and then I put the date, the first time I went over it, the second time, and the third time. September 24th, I went over all this stuff. October 5th, and you can see that I just went over that. Then the second time I went over it, on different days. You can see this is over the course of a month. And then what I did on the third time I went over it is I would fill it out with a green box if I felt good with it. So all of this stuff I'm pretty comfortable with. I would put a red box on it if I was not comfortable with it, so if I need to go over it an additional time. So optical illusions, I always struggled with those. I still do to this day. So put a red box over that to study right before my check ride. The Delta 3 hinge on the tail rotor. Coriolis force, just a little bit more information. So you can see yellow is something whenever I wanted to bring attention to something. So like advisory circulars, I needed to print those, so I just put like a yellow box there so I'd remember it. And you can see that's my pass tracker, so you can do it however you want, but this is just an idea. When I was ready for my CFI check ride, I knew I'd covered literally all of this, so at least that puts me in a decent position and it helps my comfort level. So that is my study guide. That's how I went through private, commercial, CFI. I wrote down all the different subject areas that I wanted to cover, and I would cover it once, and then a second time, and a third time, or as many times as it took me to feel comfortable. So just doing that, you are solid. You are set for success. And with that set up, how do you actually study? And this method works wonders for me. This is how I carried myself through flight school. This was incredible. It is called the Pomodoro technique, or the Pomodoro method. And I don't know if I'm saying it right, but Pomodoro. Yeah. How it works is there is a set time period of very committed studying and then a break. And then another set time period of committed studying and then a break. So the most common style and the one that I really like is what's called 45 on, 15 off. 45 minutes on of studying, 15-minute break. And so with this 45 minutes, there are no distractions. Turn your phone on do not disturb, turn your computer on do not disturb. Go to somewhere where you're not gonna have distractions like the dogs or people if practical. It's not always practical, but try to get as secluded and turn everything off. And for 45 minutes, you are going to sit down and study. And you're gonna really engage with the material. You're gonna read something, see if it makes sense, try to write it out and explain it back. If it doesn't make sense, you can go on the computer and search it up and use textbooks. And every single piece of knowledge as you're working your way through that past tracker, you're really engaging with. And what I found, like the first couple times I did it, was, wow, 45 minutes goes by so fast. When you don't have the disruption of your phone, you can really get a lot of hard work in. And the thing is, let's say you do like 45 on, 15 off, 45 on, 15 off. So it's like a 2-hour block with an hour and a half of studying. An hour and a half of committed studying where you say, I'm really learning this stuff, no distractions, I'm gonna engage with it. An hour and a half every day, if you can do that, that is so much better than even like 4 or 5 hours with my phone or when I'm getting up. And during that 45 minutes, like I'm not going to get to the bathroom. I'm taking care of that during the break. I'm not like getting up, I'm not stretching. I am here with the material. That hour and a half of studying, you can get so much done. And then at the end to just like have 15 minutes where you're like, I just did a lot of work and I feel good. And now I can sit on my phone and look at it and have no guilt about it. If you search up study with me on YouTube with the Pomodoro technique, you're gonna see videos of people where they've got like a timer on screen and they're studying as well. And you can watch that 45-minute video studying together. And I know it kind of sounds weird to like study with some dude on your screen or some girl on your screen, but it really helps because you see them sitting there working hard, not distracted for 45 minutes, and you sit there and you do your work and you guys are just typing, writing away, getting your work done. It's like you have a study buddy that's really committed, and you know you don't want to study with someone who's gonna be messing around. And those YouTube videos really did wonders for me. If you were studying for an upcoming check ride, like your private, your commercial, or even your CFI, I've built a $50 study course. The link is in the description below. It is the study course that I wish I had, especially if you're going for your private pilot's license. That course is like 12 hours of video content where I explain every single concept, and it is such a great value for your money. So link is in the description below. And if you guys stuck around this far, I really appreciate you hanging out. I hope you learned something. If you like the video, smash the like button and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one.